All right, now let's talk about Reagan. Reagan is president from 1981 to 1989. And people either love him or they hate him. Depends on who you talk to. So Reagan's known as being a really great communicator. He knows how to be kind of hands-off, but he really did lead some major changes during his presidency. One of the big ones is going to be what we call Reaganomics. And there's several components to Reaganomics. One's going to be cutting taxes and domestic spending. He's going to really cut taxes on businesses and the wealthy. There were some groups that had to pay up to 75% of their income to taxes. So if you made $1 million a year, you had to pay $750,000 to the government in taxes of what you earned. So he cut taxes for the businesses and the wealthy. He felt that these tax savings would most likely be invested to raise productivity and increase employment, and it would be what we call a trickle-down effect. So kind of trickle-down economics. You give the rich some more freedom and profit, and then they're able to pass that on to people that make less money. To finance the tax cut and to make a difference for it, he did reduce spending on some federal welfare programs. One other thing he's going to do is he's going to have more deregulation for industry, and he's going to make it easier for companies to compete. He's going to order a lot of agencies to cut back rulemaking and allow businesses greater freedom. He's also going to relax enforcement of antitrust laws, so he's going to be a big fan of this phrase we see a lot, laissez-faire. He's going to start kind of bringing this back. Something else that's going to be a part of Reaganomics is he's going to increase military spending, which he financed through borrowing. So unfortunately, this is going to lead to a growing deficit. And deficit meaning that we spend more money than we collect in taxes. So that's going to be something that's going to definitely affect us. And so some factors that happen as a result of this. We're going to see the economy coming out of a recession that it was really stagnant for most of the 70s and not doing well. And it's going to start coming out of that. We're going to see a lot more business activity. We're going to see oil prices stabilize. So we see some pluses. But then this is going to be a big minus that is still haunting us today, is this federal deficit increasing. Now looking at some of his foreign policy. One of the big quotes that he uses with his foreign policy is the idea of peace through strength. And he had the quote, "Let he who desires peace prepare for war." So with this, he comes up with some different doctrines or ideas, and one of them is the Reagan doctrine, which again has to do with communism. He is very anti-communist, and his goal is to try to, instead of just containing communism where it is, he wants to try to roll back communism by aiding anti-communist freedom fighters. So if you are in a country and that country has a communist government and you are rebels that are wanting to overthrow that communist government, then he wants us to aid those rebels that are trying to overthrow that government. And we're going to see where that comes into a scandal later on. Something else that he's going to push for in his foreign policy is going to be a strategic defense initiative. And I love this because the nickname for this is Star Wars. And so basically what this was is using lasers to shoot down missiles that maybe, let's say the Soviet Union shoots missiles at us, then it's lasers that come from maybe satellites that would prevent the nuclear attack. So he talks about this a lot. Really the big thing he gets out of this is these repeated announcements about these defense initiatives is it's going to disturb Soviet leaders. And also if he keeps building up our military and our military technology, and the Soviets are really having a hard time keeping up, and they almost pretty much go bankrupt trying to keep up with us and what we're doing with our military spending. Two other issues with foreign policy during this time. We send Marines to Lebanon during this time. This is really when terrorism, as we know it today, starts taking off, as in the 80s, where you have some assassinations, kidnappings, hijacking planes. That's going to become more prevalent in the 80s. So in 1982, the Israelis, they invade Lebanon. They start a civil war between the Christians and the Palestinian refugees in the area. And so Lebanon requests multinational forces to restore the order. So we send U.S. Marines, and there's French paratroopers that show up. And in 1983, there's a suicide bomber that attacks barracks in Beirut, in the capital of Lebanon, and as a result, 241 Marines are killed and 58 paratroopers are killed. Reagan, shortly after this, withdraws the troops from Lebanon. This starts the idea of not negotiating with terrorists, even though they've bombed us. And so this is just, again, one of those examples that we're going to see throughout the 80s, 90s, and into today with the issue of terrorism. Probably one of the biggest foreign policy stains on Reagan's career is probably the Iran-Contra affair. So the Contras, in case you need to know, they are the rebels, and they are in Nicaragua. And you're probably wondering, Nicaragua is in Central America, and you're probably wondering, what does Iran and the Middle East have to do with Nicaragua in Central America? Well, so what happens here is during this time in during the 80s, in the Iran-Contra affair, there's going to be a secret foreign policy operation, and they are going to act against, refusing to negotiate with terrorists, and they're going to secretly sell arms to Iran as part of a deal in exchange for the release of American hostages in Lebanon. So we sell arms to Iran, and then we use the profits from those sales and use those to support anti-communist Contra rebels fighting in Nicaragua. And this was done even though Congress said we can't give aid to the Contras. They are seen as a rebel group, an anti-government group. We can't help them. And so when this is revealed, the country is shocked that that we actually indirectly supported global terrorism by selling these weapons to Iran. And really, Reagan gets out of it. He squeaks out without any direct wrongdoing, but because he didn't watch and monitor some of his top officials that worked on this deal, then that's where the issue is going to be, is there's going to be some officials that are actually convicted of lying to Congress, and they're going to be sent to prison. And the big thing that's going to happen from this overall is going to be that this tarnishes America's credibility in the world. And so, we've had Watergate in the 70s. Now we have Iran-Contra in the 80s is going to be the big one that doesn't really help our reputation too much. And citizens who find out about this, again, start to seriously question their trust in the government. But Reagan, being the people person he is, he still enjoys strong support of the American public despite issues like the Iran-Contra affair.